Hey, do you want to make a podcast? Guess what? Now you can. With Spotify for Podcasters. Spotify for Podcasters is an app and a platform that is a very, very easy one-stop shop that has pretty much everything that you need to make a podcast. You can record directly to your phone. You don't need any mics other than your phone mic, which if that works, you're good. It has sound bites. It has tools that allow you to clip and edit your podcast on the go, on your phone, on your laptop, on your iPad, whatever you want. And the cool thing is, even though it's Spotify for Podcasters, it doesn't just upload to Spotify. It uploads to every major podcast platform that is available on the interweb. So if you upload this to this platform, it goes everywhere.
You know what else is everywhere? My brain, because my mind is blown.
With Spotify for Podcasters, there's more way you can earn money. You can get it through ads, or you can get it through subscriptions. And the best catch of it all, free.
You gotta be.
We actually started uploading podcasts with the help of Spotify for podcasters.
Version 1.
We started as a little small baby podcast, and now we're a big, hulking, big podcast.
We're a conglomerate!
Why not try it today? Download the app for Spotify for podcasters, or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another episode of your second favorite podcast. I'm here with the usual suspects, Justin, Garrick, and Gabe. And joining us today, Garrick, if you'd be so kind as to introduce our guest.
You have seen him in various movies and TV shows, such as Sons of Anarchy, Hellboy. And if you're that producer, you better not see him in the streets. We got Ron Perlman in the building, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate you taking the time out and stuff like that. I think we're just going to get right into it. Ron, who are you? Where'd you come from? What's your story?
Well, I've been trying to figure out who I am for a long time now. So who knows? Maybe this could be the moment where everything starts to become less unclear. But I come from New York City. I was born and raised in Washington Heights section of New York City, which is the northernmost part of Manhattan. My parents lived there their entire lives. They met there, and they lived there. They fell in love there. They died there, and somewhere along the way, I popped out. So my background is the lean, mean streets of New York. I stayed in school for as long as I possibly could because I was mostly terrified of coming out into the world and having to be responsible and pay bills and make a living and stuff.
It sucks.
So I have a master's degree from the University of Minnesota, which was the only time I left New York for any period of time in my entire youth. And that was from 1971 to 73. Let me know when you get bored with my bio here.
We have so much time.
Yeah, exactly.
So
this is exactly.
It's really impossible.
That master's degree was in theater, correct?
Yes, it was.
Awesome.
Amazing.
So, when did you figure out you wanted to pursue acting as like a full-time career? Because obviously going to Minnesota from New York to pursue it, acting is not a small feat.
No, and I don't have small feet, so that's why the match was so perfect.
It's got puns, folks.
It's kind of a theme there, big feet jump into
big projects and shit.
Big feats. No, I did my first play in high school, and it was kind of a discovery of the community that I felt I was meant to be a part of. I finally was in a group of people while we were rehearsing the play that was where I was one of the least fucked up people in the group. And so that's when you discover, oh shit, maybe this is my métier, maybe this is my milieu, all those French words. Maybe this is my entrepreneur. No, that's a different one. filet mignon.
There we go.
Now we're back on track. Yeah.
Arroz con pollo. No, that's a whole different language. Anyway, and I fell so in love with the whole process. You rehearse, and while you're rehearsing, you're discovering, taking these kind of words that are on a page and breathing life into them, and then finding humanity in them. Then all of a sudden, after a period of time, an audience shows up, and you start doing it in front of them, and you start getting responses, and you start realizing you're controlling however many people are in the audience, which is kind of an aphrodisiac. And so I went in whole hog. And basically, from the moment that I did my first play in high school, I did nothing but plays for the rest of my time in high school. Then nothing but plays for the entire 4 years of undergrad, which was in the Bronx in New York. And then 2 more years of grad school at the University of Minnesota, just doing one play after another. I'd be rehearsing one thing in the afternoon and performing something else at night. And that was my laboratory. That was where I kind of, that 8 years worth of stage was where I started flexing the muscles and failing and succeeding and figuring out the tricks of the trade, and falling deeper and deeper in love with the aphrodisiac that is acting on stage in front of people and getting a real-time response. You feel it electrically in the air.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it's pretty cool.
I feel like, especially you growing up in New York, you kind of have access to a lot of playhouses, I would assume, right? Like the theater over there has to be rich. Like, was it easy for you to kind of find, gigs and stuff for you to do and all that?
Well, once I got back from the U of M, by that point, I said, okay, I don't think I can waste any more time getting more degrees and just kind of avoiding, the real reality of the thing. The reason why I avoided it as long as I did is because everybody that I knew who was trying to be an actor in New York, their clothes were threadbare. They had no money for anything. They ate spaghetti 3 times a day, or ramen, or like whatever you do when you have zero money, and their lives seem to be completely fucking miserable. So I said, well, I don't think I'm good enough to jump into that pack, and I certainly don't think I'm prepared for that kind of lean, non gratifying kind of approach to living.
Right.
But then when I realized, like, I didn't get a thrill from anything unless I was acting, I said, okay, there's no more avoiding this. So the first time I experienced real New York, like Midtown New York, downtown New York, because Washington Heights is almost like a different borough, even though you're still technically in Manhattan, was when I came back from grad school. I got a place in Greenwich Village, and yeah, I started auditioning for off-Broadway theater, because you didn't need any kind of credentials. You didn't need any union cards to do those kind of plays. They didn't pay anything, but it was an opportunity to do more theater and maybe, have people see you, and work with people who were actually trying to do the same thing I was. So there was some networking involved with it and everything like that. And so from 1973 to 1980, I just did really low budget, shitty theater in New York. But I pretty much, and every once in a while, I would see a $50 bill in the street, and so I treat myself to a Broadway play.
Nice.
One way or another. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to get exposed to all of the culture in New York. Theater being very much a vital part of it, and luckily for a guy like me who wanted to immerse himself in that world. There was, so much happening, so much going on, particularly when I was doing it, which was the 70s and the 80s. So it was still very vital. It didn't have the kind of competition it has now, and actors were very happy staying in New York and just doing theater.
Right. And then I'm sure that networking in New York was very crucial to you, I guess, transitioning into cinema, which, how did that come about, going from being in the theater pretty much your entire life up to this point? What was the transition like going from the stage to an actual movie, like cinema? I think it was 1981 was when the first movie you did came out? Was it?
The first one came out in 81. I actually had my first meeting for that movie in 79.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And didn't start shooting it until 79/80. And then it came out in 81. It was called Quest for Fire. It was a caveman movie. And the reason why I got it is because of my sort of simian Neanderthal facial structure. It had nothing to do with talent. It had nothing to do with anything other than the fact that the guy said, think of the amount of money we could save on makeup if we had. So
got it all.
That's how that happened.
That's awesome.
Caveman, yeah.
But I guess
try parlaying a career when your only credential is, I played a caveman that lived 80,000 years ago. That's going to lead to a lot of work.
Like, I have real depth in my characters. Trust me. Like, I can do it all.
He's been around 80,000 years.
Exactly.
So I guess the relationship with the director that you worked with, did that lead to, I guess, because you did 2 of his movies, because the next one was Name of a Rose in 1986, I believe, correct? Or I think I missed it.
Yes, 86 was Name of the Rose, and then 94 was Enemy at the Gates. Mm-hmm. So I did a third film for Jean-Jacques Hano, who directed all 3 of those, and then we worked together again. I don't know in what year, but that was maybe about 2016. He did a miniseries for Epix, or Epic, or whatever that adjunct streaming network is of MGM, called A Day in the Life of Harry K. Bear or something like that. And so I did that. So we worked together like 4 or 5 times.
Right.
And that was when I discovered the glory of working with someone, scratching the surface very deeply, from going to just a kind of a superficial working relationship to becoming friendly enough to want to keep working with them over and over again.
Right.
Which has been a theme of my life. There's a bunch of directors that I've done 3 or 4 or 5 things for, which I love because it kind of harkens back to my favorite period in cinema, which was the 30s and 40s, where you saw that the great directors always had their troupe of actors, the same guys that worked with them over and over again because they admired each other so much. They obviously enjoyed each other's company so much. Yeah. And, there was a shorthand, director would be thinking something and the actor would be able to guess exactly how to get there on a performance level.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of that, and I've been a major recipient of those kinds of relationships over the years. But the very first one was with this genius Frenchman named Jean-Jacques Hano, who directed those 4 films.
How'd you end up meeting him?
He was looking for people who looked like Neanderthals. You're not paying attention.
We're going to get quizzed after this.
I know, seriously. You got to get homework after this.
But I think that, at least from, because I mean, none of us have any insight into the world of acting.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that having that relationship with someone you've worked with, multiple times on multiple films is imperative to the creation of that from start to finish, when you have that rapport with a director that you've worked with multiple times. I'm sure that's very, very important to consistently go back to the same person and consistently, I guess, deliver what they're looking for in, why they asked you to be in the movie in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Who would you say was like the easiest director to work with over the years that you've worked with?
Well, Jean-Jacques, because by the time we worked on something for the second time, we realized, my God, there's, he trusts me. He trusts me to give this role to, and then lets me run wild in terms of what I bring to it. When there's trust on a set or in any walk of life, everything goes so much smoother and everything is so much more joyful because trust kind of connotes so many other things like respect and admiration. You're not going to have trust unless you have those other things as well. So,
right.
Then there was Guillermo del Toro, who I also have now done, I think, I lost count, but it's at least 6 projects, 2 of which were Hellboy, but the first movie he ever made was a thing called Kronos, Spanish film made in Mexico City, very, very, very tiny, low budget film, and won all kinds of awards. And it was the springboard for Guillermo being introduced to the world as an important new voice in cinema. And then I kind of rode his wave of, as he evolved and as he did more projects, he had me in a lot of them. So that's easy because that same thing that, the kind of a trust, the kind of like, I'm gonna entrust you with this role because I know once I do, there's one less thing for me to worry about. And there's an awful lot of stuff for a filmmaker to have to worry about. So the less things they have to worry about when they approach this mammoth undertaking of making a movie, the more smoothly things go.
And I know he didn't ask this one, or I know he didn't answer this one yet. How did you meet him?
J-Date.
You're perusing?
No, I went to a cockfight down in the alley in Mexican part of town. No, that's not true either.
I would have believed you.
Yeah. Shit, all right. He's like, East LA. Okay.
I was doing pretty good there for a second. Guillermo, when he was getting ready to make this first film, he had done a lot of television stuff down in Mexico, which was centered around horror and monsters and stuff. And in preparing to figure out how to realize his vision for what monsters were going to look like in each of his projects, he was studying the work of most of the actors who work for special effects makeup artists who created monster looks. The guy who created Frankenstein was the state of the art, and the Wolfman, all those early special effects makeup artists. And because I had done Quest of Fire and then Name of the Rose and then Beauty and the Beast, I was known as somebody who didn't mind putting on prosthetic makeup and doing kind of mask acting.
Right.
And Guillermo just had to watch a lot of it because he was a monster maker, and a monster director. So he was very familiar with my work, and I think he wanted me to be a part of his first movie, almost like a talisman, like a good luck charm, like a rabbit's foot.
Right.
And so he wrote me this beautiful letter, and then came to Los Angeles, and we broke bread together, and we had a phenomenal time. And I ended up going down to Mexico and doing this movie, and it was the same scenario as with Jean-Jacques. We became much more than collaborators. We became really buds who enjoyed each other's company, who did way more than work together. We just hung out, we ate together, we went to see movies together, we talked incessantly about cinema, and we became really good friends. So as he broadened his path toward where we find him now, which is at the top of the food chain, he brought me along with him.
That's
Wonderful.
incredible.
That's awesome. When it comes to Guillermo del Toro's work with you, I was wondering, how does it feel voice acting? Like you just voice acted in the new film Pinocchio that was out a while ago. When it comes to your roles, like we noticed that you choose a lot of voice acting roles and just live action roles. Which do you prefer, and what led you to wanting to do more voice acting? Because your voice acting work is phenomenal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, I've gone through a lot of really, really lean times. I mean, if you just count the number of things I did, it looks like I've been working nonstop from the time I started till now. But there were a lot of periods where there was 2-3 years that went by where I couldn't book a fucking gig to save my life. And in the 90s, I just started to broaden my search for things. And I ended up with a voiceover agency who also cast cartoons. And I started booking some of these cartoons, and I realized, holy shit, this is so much fun. The guys who were in the room, Maurice LaMarche, and I mean, I'm 73, so I can't remember anybody's name anymore, but the guys who were doing the voice acting were not known for anything else. They were strictly voice actors, were the most talented motherfuckers. I mean, you'd get finished doing a session where we'd all be in the room and we'd all be doing the voices for this cartoon. And cartoon is like, as you realize, as you know from seeing it, it's balls out comedy.
Yeah.
It's broad, it's big, and it's fun. And at the end of these sessions, I'd want to, I'd look around and go, okay, who do I pay? Because I just had the greatest time, watching these guys act. And it became kind of a real pure joy and then the more you do it, the more you're known for doing it, the more people you meet along the way who do other cartoons. There's 5 or 6 potent animation studios in Los Angeles. Warner Brothers does huge amounts of cartoon stuff. They're the ones who, kind of, along with Disney, invented the state of the art. They gave us Bugs Bunny and all of his pals. And you just start working and you start meeting people and they start inviting you to do more and more. And you start realizing this is like, you don't have to shave. You don't have to comb your hair. You show up, you sit in front of a microphone. You go nuts.
Yeah, exactly.
And you act like a fucking 6-year-old. And
then they pay you.
And they pay you.
Sounds great.
You get on a podcast like this.
This prestigious podcast.
And you start talking about, how much fun it was.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Well,
That's amazing.
What were some, I guess, the first cartoons that you worked on that made you kind of want to, like, man, I want to do this again? Like, referencing what you were saying a moment ago about just, going in there with I guess, like, almost no expectations, and then it becoming something that's like, oh my God, this is incredible. What were some of the earliest projects you worked on that, I guess, gave you that want to come back?
I'm looking myself up on IMDb because
We were doing that minutes ago. Don't worry.
There was. Oh, look! I wrote Ron, and my name came up. That's impressive.
How's that feel?
Yeah. How does that feel?
How's that feel?
Being able to Google yourself,
To be a top result on Google.
These days, the only thing I feel is back pain and
Real
leg
shit.
cramping.
Yeah. No, I get you.
And rashes in the perineum. I just found out what the perineum is from watching Ozempic commercials. If you have a problem with your perineum, you really want to stay home.
I think I got one right
You
now.
heard it here first.
You know what the perineum is?
Yes.
Gabe,
Yeah.
Gabe, you went to body school.
Yeah, Gabe. So Gabe is actually he majors in kinesiology. So we all of our body questions we go to this guy.
The perineum is all of you guys.
Damn.
Wow. All right.
What is the vernacular word for perineum, Gabe?
I think it is perineum, is it not? Is it something?
You should know. You have the degree.
Not
yet. Yeah, almost.
Not yet.
Almost. Yeah.
Working on it.
Okay, well, I'm going to educate you and your audience as well.
Let's
the
go.
Perineum is the taint.
The gooch.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And you know how the taint got its name, right?
How?
No.
Well, it's that spot, that sits right in the middle. So taint your balls and taint your ass.
Nice. Okay.
This is great. This is great.
Great. Okay.
Love all of that.
I don't know how we got into that, but
No,
that was not my cartoon.
We don't need to leave too. We can figure it out.
My first cartoon had nothing to do with it.
That'd be crazy if your first cartoon was like, this is all about taints and like
about
weird
taints,
shit. Like, by the way,
Somebody on Adult Swim needs to do a whole cartoon about the
the
taint.
perineum.
I'm sure they're on it.
Either it hasn't been done or they're
Yeah.
in production right now.
Yeah,
you
that's-
may.
That's money right
You guys
there.
might be onto something.
Don't if you're watching this, we're patenting this.
We're patenting the taint cartoon. Yeah.
Ron, do you want to be a part of
Yeah, I was
this?
gonna say, Ron.
gonna say,
What's
Yeah, if you'd like, you're more than welcome.
Intellectual property.
What does it pay?
hopes and dreams.
Dreams, there you go.
We're gonna pay you an exposure.
Yeah, exposure.
You gotta come to me with something big and sexy, baby.
A taint. Yeah, really
And I'll
big
be your
taint.
Huckleberry. No, like the very first, as I was looking it up, I remember the very first cartoon I was ever invited to do was called Bonkers, which was about a detective named Bonkers who was some animal. I can't remember what he was. It's really important that I remember the name of this voiceover actor because he's legendary.
And I feel like that community is kind of small to an extent. Like
Yeah,
I know a lot of the
obviously
voice
the bigger
actors,
names for sure.
they do everything.
Yes.
Like
Because they
Tara
practice-
Strong and
so-
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
The lead actor in Bonkers was Jim Cummings.
Mhm.
Oh, gotcha.
Frank Welker was in Bonkers. Jeff Bennett. This is royalty. This is
Yeah.
voiceover
Mhm.
royalty. April Winchell. This is where I met Maurice LaMarche,
Mhm.
who does the best. He's Pinky and the Brain. I mean,
Right.
That's right.
this was
Legendary.
the state of the art. And the woman who brought me onto the show
Mhm.
was Andrea Romano. She directed most of the episodes, and she gave me my very first voiceover gig. And then pretty much anytime Andrea worked after that, she was on the payroll of Warner Brothers, which was a very prolific animation studio.
Right.
So pretty much anytime she worked, she put me in it. I was on Teen Titans with her, and so many gigs. She was so much fun. She was so much fun to work with. She really loved comedy. She was a funny lady herself. When you gave a performance that tickled her funny bone, you got so much appreciation, so much love. And it was another one of those things where we just, took our devotion for each other and our admiration for each other outside the studio and became really good friends.
That's awesome.
And do you
That
find
was my
it
first voiceover gig.
nice? Do you also find it like, I don't know if it's hard because especially with you, doing theater, you kind of have a broad audience to gather a reaction to. And when you're in a recording booth, it's kind of just you and the guy recording and maybe a few other auxiliary people. did you find it almost harder to kind of feel the reaction of what you were doing, or were they all pretty receptive and kind of giving you more or less a North Star to kind of go towards?
Well, every experience, you just never know who you're going to be in the room with. I mean, whether it be a film or a play or a voiceover where you're just in a booth, sometimes with the whole cast, or sometimes just by yourself doing your own performance, and then they put it all together. Like that's how I worked on Transformers. I never met anybody in the rest of the cast until the premiere, which a few weeks ago. The skill set is the same, but the conditions are different. When you're acting for the theater, you have to hit the top seat in the balcony. So you have to project, and there's a certain sort of size that you have to, even if you're doing something intimate, you have to make it look intimate, even though you're projecting to the back row. Whereas in movies, you can be as intimate and as small as you want to be because you're mic'd and the camera is catching everything. And you're almost being asked to be super real and super simple and authentic. There's no leeway for overacting when you're acting for and then you get into voiceover stuff, and some of it is kind of like what I just described, but then some of it is like balls out comedy, like Bugs Bunny. If I was on a Bugs Bunny cartoon, it's like your level is just like you're invited to be wacky and big and fun. So you basically have to figure out, those things are up to you to figure out. Gotcha. What levels you need to, and what kind of how to temper. It's like making a recipe. You're cooking, but you're using different ingredients every time.
Gotcha. Right. And then I'm just curious because I'm thinking about this now. When you're doing movies, doing voice actor work, eventually it got to a point where superhero movies were like the biggest thing, kind of just they were everywhere. So when you first started doing, I guess, more roles in that realm, like doing Blade 2 and then doing Hellboy and things like that, was that something that you wanted to pursue prior to you getting an offer, or is it like you getting offered the role and like, oh yeah, that'd be kind of cool, and then kind of it went from there?
I would say 95% of the stuff that I did came out of nowhere. I could be pursuing something for 10 years, and then all of a sudden I get a call, hey Ron, I'm doing Blade. I wrote this part for you. And now I'm doing Blade. It wasn't because I was dreaming of doing Blade or aspiring to be doing Blade. It was just Guillermo got the gig and he spread the wealth, and now I'm in this franchise, this Blade franchise. And now I got to go around the world telling them how great the Blade franchise is, even though I don't give a fuck. But that's part of the game. But most of the stuff that I ended up doing for real came out of, not because it was kind of the end result of my own efforts, but it was just, very rarely have I tried to get a project up and running and then been successful. Right. I did have a production company for about 5 years called Winging a Prayer Pictures, and I got a bunch of movies that from the ground up made and done. But that's also really hard, and your success rate and your burn rate are really subject to too many whims and too much capriciousness, and so it's not for the faint of heart.
Of course.
But in terms of my acting work, when I wasn't giving myself a job because I was producing the fucking movie, most things just came out of nowhere.
Right.
And you'd read it and sometimes you'd go, oh yeah, this is just one to pay the rent. I hope nobody sees this piece of shit. Sometimes you look at it and you go, wow, this is tripped out, man. I'm working with a mind-blowing bunch of people, and the script is fucking, out of this world, smart and fun and unpredictable and exciting and dangerous, and you just basically take what you can get a lot of the time and make the most of it.
You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but where does Blade 2 fall into that? I love that movie. The Taint.
When you start a sentence with, you don't have to answer this, my mind just kind of...
He was like, not going to answer it. Got it.
Yeah.
Totally.
This isn't about the perineum, is it?
No, it's not. I was just wondering which of those categories does Blade 2 fall into? Because I love that franchise and I love that movie. And, I feel like, Reinhardt added a lot of dynamic and a lot of depth to that movie, adding a character that, Blade had to work with, but was still like there was this animosity, this tension the entire movie that doesn't get resolved until the last 10 minutes of the movie. So
yeah, that was just Guillermo having fun. I mean, he went in and they had already made one movie, a Blade movie, and Guillermo, being a comic book aficionado as he is, and a real fan of horror. The Blade franchise, the Blade world was up his alley, and he went into the studio and pitched his idea of what Blade 2 would look like, and they said, this sounds really cool, and they hired him. And right after they hired him, he called me up and he said, I'm thinking about this role for you, and blah, blah, blah. And so I was along for almost the whole ride and watched this idea that he had for Reinhardt keep growing and keep evolving and keep changing, and left a lot of room for me to make suggestions about, what his place in the story was, and what his contribution was going to be, what his impact was going to be. So that was just like one of these things that, like I said, came out of the blue, but made for a really cool ride.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
Question. I'm just curious now, you seem to really enjoy talking about Reinhardt and just remembering all of that. What do you think would be, or who is your favorite character that you've played or voiced just in your entirety of your career? Like, who do you think that would be?
I get that question a lot, and I can understand. I would ask that question of people whose work I watched and was obsessed with watching. And the fact of the matter is, I have been, and I'm not blowing smoke, and I'm not making it sound like this is a generic, cowardly answer, but there's no way to, with all of the amazing parts that fell into my lap, that came my way, like I said, mostly randomly, there's no way to say that Hellboy was better than Clay Morrow, was better than The Beast, was better than Judge Purnell on Hand of God. I mean, there have been so many roles that I just fucking loved the characters, and then playing them, finding them, because as you give the performance, you're finding the character as you go along. There's no way I could pick out one. Okay. Or even a handful.
Yeah. That's completely understandable. Addendum, who would you want to have a drink with the most?
Yeah, exactly. Out of all your characters.
Like, who would you want to sit down drinking cigar?
Well, just me. I think I'm cooler than anybody I've ever played.
There you go. Yes. There you go. Yes. So funny.
I spend a lot of time drinking and smoking cigars all by myself. So.
He's like, it's sick as shit.
Cause basically, people don't like me. I don't know why. I don't know what it is, but
so
who gives a shit?
Mentioning about how you prepare for roles and finding those characters, what what is that process like for you when you get a role and you start to work on a project, and then you're reading the script? Obviously, you're identifying with the character, etc. What is that process like to you from going from getting a project, starting to work on a project, and then finding that character in that project, in that moment where you're going through your scenes, you're going through your lines, and you're thinking, okay, well, this is what this character would do in this scenario. Like, what's that process like for you? I guess going from reading the script to actually being on set and turning that character into your performance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's pretty immediate, because the minute you read something, if you read it and you can't figure out who this character is in the story, why he's in the story, what his kind of persona looks and feels like, there's no way to pursue it any further. But the opposite is true. When you read a script and they send you a script and they say, take a look at this character while you're reading it, and you see you really dig the world of the movie, where the movie is and who's in it and what they're up against and what happens in the course of the film. And you really dig the guy that they're asking you to play and know that you understand him. If you don't understand him, that there's a million roads in, that you can, if you work on him and think about him enough, you'll get there. That's very important, because you don't want to play anything that you don't understand. And you don't want to play anything that you don't feel you're right for. You don't want to play anything that you don't feel you're going to have a degree of success in. Because it's not good for you, but it's totally not good for the project if you're just playing a role and then hoping, for some sort of divine intervention.
Of course.
You got to know pretty much as you're reading it, like, oh yeah, I get this guy. And not only do I get him, I dig him enough where I want to spend time figuring him out. And as I'm figuring him out, the audience will be as well. And that'll be fun. So that's my criteria. But it's pretty immediate. The minute you read a script, you either dig it, and then you dig the character that they're asking you to play, or you don't. And if you don't say yes.
Right.
It's good advice.
And then, is there any characters that you've portrayed, I guess, to rephrase the question that was asked earlier, that process has come easier than others, or has it always been pretty evenly, like immediate, like you said?
Well, when Guillermo wrote Hellboy, when he adapted Hellboy had already existed as a comic book.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if you read the comic book, you realize Hellboy spoke in one-word sentence. Sometimes not words, just grunts.
Yeah.
He was really not very verbal. And his persona, his personality, was not particularly well delineated. So in making the film, it was Guillermo's job to put meat and bones on the character and give him a personality.
Right.
And since what was fascinating to Guillermo about Hellboy was the fact that he's basically got this unbelievable physical skill set, but he's basically an underachiever, a slob who really just wants to stay home and eat pizza and watch Three Stooges and Marx Brothers movies and play with his cats, then go out and save the world. He said to himself, okay, I'm going to build this whole character around Ron Perlman's personality, because he's a slob and really wants to not go out and do anything for anybody, just wants to stay home and play with the dogs.
I get it.
and watch Marx Brothers movies. So that was the easiest character to play, because he wrote me.
He just like me for real.
That's incredible.
And even though I was wearing 4 hours worth of rubber on my face, and I didn't look like me at all, he was the easiest character to play, strangely enough. The hardest character to play, I wore no makeup at all except for some tattoos, and that was Clay Morrow in Sons of Anarchy. Because that was one of those roles where I almost was in that place when I read it that I said, don't say yes. Because I didn't relate to Clay Morrow. Clay Morrow was a ruthless, tough, badass, violent, militaristic, gun-loving murderer. And I didn't know how to get in. I really didn't know how to get in. But I also knew that if I didn't take my best shot at him, I would be missing out on a phenomenal opportunity.
Right.
So I said yes to Clay Morrow, but I was terrified because I didn't understand initially how to play him. And I'm noticing that there's a shaft of sun on my face. Is this fucking up?
Oh no, you're good.
You're
totally
good.
Fine. Yeah.
I had the same beam of light in my face earlier. I was trying
dodging
to
light.
Yeah, it's gonna move as we go along here. But I'm glad I did it because sometimes you have to reach beyond your grasp. Sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone and play things that are a little bit uncomfortable or a little bit uneasy. And there's a lot of reward that comes with that, like if you stick with it and then you end up doing it and the audience, gives you the stamp of approval. That show was on for 7 years.
So of course,
we're all doing something that resonated.
There's such a
and that actually segues perfectly into another question that I've written down here. When you were, two questions actually. When you first got the offer to do Clay, was it how much information you given on the show itself? Like, were you aware that it was like loosely based on Hamlet, or did you have to figure that out? Like, I guess as the show progressed.
Yeah.
No, I sat down with Kurt Sutter, who had created the show. They had already shot the pilot with another actor playing Clay, and they were unhappy with not his acting because he's a brilliant actor, but they were unhappy with the fact that his tone wasn't as explosive and violent and operatic enough for what they were looking for. So they decided to recast the role and reshoot all of his scenes. But they needed to be very careful because they'd already spent a lot of money on the first pilot.
Of course.
So I sat down with Kurt and he gave me all of this, like, this is what you need to know, man. We want you to play the role. You're not going to get it unless you audition. You have to go into the network. You have to read for all of the executives, which is like 35 motherfuckers in the room.
That's crazy.
And if you don't come in and audition, you're not going to get it. But we do want you to come in and audition. We are all rooting for you to get it. And here's what you need to know. And he explained to me the whole model of the Hamlet kind of skeleton, the fact that the king is dead. The queen is now married the king's best friend, who now has usurped the kingdom and become the king by marrying the queen. And the prince, her offspring, is getting visitations saying something is rotten in the state of Denmark, which is basically how the springboard for Sons of Anarchy. It was the exact same parameters as it was based on Hamlet. And then from there on, it was completely unlike Hamlet because it was motorcycles and, and Hell's Angel types. And,
there's not motorcycles in Hamlet. Okay. Good to know.
Good to know.
Good to know.
Well, it depends on what production you see.
What stage you're going through.
But and then to piggyback, I guess, off of that question, because I know that you said that was one of the hardest role to prepare for. Did knowing that Clay was based on Claudius, did that help you to develop the role to make it your own, or was it, I guess, here's the guidelines, and then it kind of just took on a life of its own as the show progressed, over the course of those seasons, and you understanding Clay as a character, did those parameters of the fact that he was based on Claudius, did that help with the role at all, or did it not matter in the end?
No, it helps, of course, to know where you fit into the world, what your role is. And if you know that you're based on another piece of literature, you grab as much from that original source as you possibly can. So yeah, I went back and read Hamlet 4, 5, 6 times to see what I could borrow
Right.
from Claudius, and in order to, build up my little paint box for my version of Clay Morrow. But Kurt's writing was always so specific and so vivid that you jumped off from there and then went deep, right off the bat into what he was asking of you in his storytelling. And, it was all you could do to keep up, because he moved the story along really, really rapidly.
Right.
Yeah.
And at a pace that was almost dizzying.
Right.
Yeah, that show is a lot.
Just two more Sons of Anarchy questions that piggyback off of those. Did, I guess, that pace, was that difficult to adapt to while you were filming the show?
I learned something on Sons of Anarchy, and that is I don't like change very much. There's a lot of people who don't like change.
Yep.
So you get comfortable with like the rules of the game, and then you get a script, and your best friend just gets whacked, and you were just like not ready for that.
Yeah.
Like, so you have, when you have the rug pulled out from under you, and you realize we're in a very unsafe world where no one is safe.
Right.
And there can be no complacency. And yet I'm a guy who really like clings on to the status quo. Once you tell me what we're doing here, man, don't fucking change it up on me.
Yeah.
Well, Sons of Anarchy changed every week. And we had to, adapt to these conditions that were dizzying. Or else get run over by the locomotive that was coming for us, And so that was challenging.
Right. And then when did you, or did you ever, I guess, really kind of get comfortable in the role? Because I know that pace obviously is it affects how you portray the character, and the fact that you mentioned earlier that it was the hardest character to, I guess, like adapt to or portray. Was there ever a point in filming that you were kind of just like, okay, like I understand how to do this in a way to where I feel good about, portraying the character.
It's almost second nature at that point.
Yeah, where I guess, did you ever feel comfortable adapting with that change and like adapting the character with that change, or was it always kind of like a learning experience every time that something changed in the show?
I was never comfortable. I had a sense of ownership. I had a sense that, dude, you're fucking Clay Morrow, So whatever problems you're having interpreting a scene, or not knowing how to play a scene, or not feeling equipped to understand what to bring of yourself in order to apply it to this moment, get over it. But that made for a lot of discomfort.
Right.
Because I said Clay Morrow and Ron Perlman very, very didn't hardly intersect at all.
Right.
So I was like being asked to do something way outside of my comfort zone. You use the word comfortable quite rightly. I mean, yeah, there are certain times where you're very comfortable and, I got this. And there are certain times where you've got shit running down your leg going, I don't know how I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Right.
But you get through it because otherwise you don't get the paycheck.
Yeah. Right. And then last question, we can move on from this. But when you found out that, I guess, how Clay Morrow was going to be taken care of as a character towards the end of the show, first of all, how far in advance did you find out what Clay's fate in the show was going to be? And when you found out how they were going to, I guess, wrap the character and with the end of the show, what was your feelings towards that, about how they kind of, ended that saga?
Hated it.
Really?
Really?
Fucking hated it. Hated it. didn't want to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Was too much in love with the guys coming to work on that show every day. Hated having to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And hated not making it all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But not my call.
Yeah.
Right.
At the end of the day. Yeah. I was going to ask too.
And
Continue.
you know, the thing of it is, we're dealing in a world where everybody's constantly walking on the razor's edge.
Mhm.
Of course.
And so, you know, ending up whacked, that's what you signed up for, man.
Right.
Yeah.
And whether you're happy about it or comfortable with it or not is not for you to decide.
Right.
Yeah.
How far in advance did you know how Clay was going to die? Or when he was going to die, I should say.
Kurt brought me in at the beginning of season 6 because he died almost at the end of season 6, and he said,
Right.
This is what's happening to you this season." And I didn't say very much.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have much to say, but it was a gut punch. It came as a surprise, and it was unpleasant.
Yeah.
Understandably so.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I can imagine, because like being on a show for that long, I mean, you do have to develop almost like a family, right? With all the other actors that you're participating with and all of those things. How was that like family aspect of that show? Because I mean, you guys were at the end of the day literally portraying a family to a certain extent,
Of course.
but also having the quote unquote extended family of the gang and everything like that. Like how was that, developing those friendships and everything like that?
Yeah, it's exactly what you described.
Mm-hmm.
It was way more than a gig. You know, when you're doing anything for 6 years, it becomes more of a lifestyle.
Of course.
It becomes more of things that you depend on as part of your life that you're living. It's not just a thing that I'm going to go off to do this job and I'll be back in 2 months and that'll be that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 6 years is a long time, and the bond that was created with the core members of the Sons was deep and very hard to just casually come and go.
Yeah.
And like you say, the very first, you talk about how I got started. You know, my very first high school play, I realized one of the things I love the most about this whole thing is that when you're in this situation where a bunch of people are all having to solve this problem and they're all going through these highs and lows together, and then they have this triumphant moment where they give the performance and it's beautifully received, there's a huge sense of family in that group.
Right.
And it's very, very heart-wrenching every time a job ends, because you've come to depend on these people like you would in a family. The same dynamic is at play. And so, maybe that's why actors drink so much or do drugs so much, because what they're being asked to do emotionally is challenging.
Of course.
Yeah.
They form these beautiful bonds, and then the gig's over and you got to go back to your normal, boring life.
Mm-hmm.
And so you either jump off a bridge or you start free basing, or, you just, you do what I do, which is eat every, container of Haagen-Dazs you can find.
That's a great alternative.
Yeah, what's your
Yeah,
favorite?
it is.
What's the flavor you go? What's the go-to post series ending?
That's kind of a personal question.
Got it. Yeah. We'll stay away from those things.
We're
Yeah,
not trying to cross this line.
yeah. I'm so sorry. Yeah, this is too personal.
With all of your shows and movies and the bonds you formed, I know you just said Sons of Anarchy hit hard. Would you say that one hit the hardest? Or is there another show or movie or something where after production and after wrap up and it's already out there for everybody, you felt the most connection with at the end, and that was the hardest to let go of? Or if that's
I think the reason why it's Sons is because it was 6 years, and
Yeah.
I've never done anything that lasted that long. That's just a long time,
Of course.
you know. But I have a problem every time a job ends, especially if it was a fun one, especially if the group was like just whacked out, really close. Everybody was hanging out at the end of work every day, going to dinners, hanging out and going to each other's houses and playing cards and whatever it was. You know, when you break that shit up, you know, it's like you're kind of at a loss for a few days.
Yeah,
you know,
Right.
You're wandering around aimlessly.
Shall we talk about the elephant in the room?
I think
it's time.
I think we have a
Oh
couple
no,
wrap
not
up.
the elephants.
But yeah, I think it's a good place to introduce that we can circle back to some of the earlier
Exactly.
questions that we have written down. But
So you were very, as you put on Instagram, and at this point you've said it all.
Yeah.
Got to give you credit for you.
Of course.
You don't hide your mind, which thank you for that. I'm sure there's a lot of people, especially in the industry, that see you as, you know, very high and very well respected actor, speaking your mind and truthfully, you know, which is almost a rare commodity to an extent these days.
100%. Yeah.
Obviously your stance is pretty clear, but do you want to potentially add anything to your stance on the strike that you guys are going through right now, or anything along those lines?
Well, I will be adding things as we go along here.
Of course.
I did not know that what I had to say was going to extend itself to the degree that it has. I wanted to say something about labor and management and the uneasy relationship that it's always had. And I wanted to say something about unions and dignity and value and how unions are in danger of becoming extinct because management is so determined to kill them. Because management can't stand when labor is organized and when labor is asking for things that everything, you know, the big problem with the disparity between management and labor is that it's two different mindsets. You know, the people who are in management are there because they really dig giving themselves obscene amounts of money and having all of the power for themselves.
Yeah.
They don't believe anything belongs to anybody but them. So there's this entitlement that is perpetual. And if you're a laborer, a worker bee, and you're happy being that, you don't want to be a CEO, you don't want to be the president of anything, you just want to be given the opportunity to ply your craft, and for applying your craft, to have the dignity of a good day's pay for a good day's work, and maybe get a nice, safe health plan for you and your family, and maybe have all of the work you put into lead to something like a pension, so that when you've put in 40, 50 years, you have something to show for it. If it was up to management, you wouldn't get any of that shit.
Yeah.
And the only reason why labor ever got any of that shit is because they formed unions. And unions were the things that enabled the middle class in America. Now, if we are, you know, looking at all this historically, we're realizing we're at a time where the disparity between the 1% that has 80% of all the wealth in the country and the other 99% is greater than ever. The gap is greater than ever. It's because they've killed the middle class. You're either really, really rich or you're really, really poor. and there's very, very little in the middle, and they want it that way. So there's a tension between management and labor. And when the strike happened, I basically just started talking about this thing that you and I are talking about now, about management and labor. And then it got into some of the attitudes that are reflected in stupid statements that some of the guys in management had made.
Mm-hmm.
And I went viral. And I went viral in a way that was a little jarring.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And a little scary. And even I went, oh shit, you know, I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Yeah.
So I went back on to explain
Mm-hmm.
how offensive even having that thought is, much less articulating it,
Mm-hmm.
and why I went so fucking ballistic.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I didn't apologize. You shouldn't apologize.
Correct.
When somebody has that attitude.
Yeah.
But I did say, you keep doing shit like this, and you're gonna make a very challenging situation much worse.
Yeah.
Right.
Because all you're doing is showing disdain for the people who are getting you. That
Correct.
obscene amount of money you take every year.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're showing that you really have no regard for the quality of their lives.
Yeah.
And then I did the same thing the next day. Next day was about a history lesson about how we got from family-owned businesses to corporate-owned businesses, and what happens to something that deals with the beauty of the human existence when it's seen through the lens of corporate funding. And then the next day, I don't know, I talked about some other shit. So it's turned into this kind of like, I've gotten a lot of stuff off my chest because I really care a huge amount about cinema and the world that I traffic in.
Yeah.
I feel like it has immeasurable value to the world at large. I know what it's done for me. I know what it does to the working stiff that comes home and he's had his fucking snot beat out of him all day, and he gets to sit down and watch a really cool movie or put on Sinatra or, just do something where the culture makes him feel civilized again.
Yeah.
Right.
As the people who are on the receiving end of that. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And that reminds him that, that there's other people out there that are going through the same bullshit he's going through.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that culture does, and it can never be diminished. And when you're in a business of diminishing everything simply so that you can hold on to all of the power and all of the money, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you're fucking stepping on what I know is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking a dump on what I know is, it's like taking a dump on a Picasso.
Right.
Fuck, man. Clean that shit up,
Yeah.
bro.
100%.
Picasso's not as cool as I am. I make $500 million a year, man. What the fuck does Picasso make?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm way cooler than Picasso.
Exactly.
That's how management thinks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a fucking loser.
Yeah.
You see my car? You see what I drive? You see that fucking Lamborghini that I got?
Mm-hmm.
Does Picasso have one of those? He's a piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
He's a loser. So that's the crux of where we're at.
Yeah.
With regard to management and labor. And if that's the elephant in the room, have at it, baby.
Yeah.
Right.
I did want to ask, with all productions being down right now, What are you doing to grow as an artist outside of, the industry at the moment?
I can't tell you that.
Got it. Top secret.
I'm not allowed to talk about how I get through this. I'm not even sure I'm allowed to even have this conversation with you, because I feel like, am I promoting Sons of Anarchy or Hellboy?
Yeah, exactly.
We're just talking.
If they come and take me away, it's your fault, motherfucker.
Specifically you.
Yeah,
it's my fault.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. No.
So fucking funny.
And then I guess, circling to that point of yours, what is I guess a way that you feel is the best course of action to kind of make sure that everyone's treated fairly and everyone that can, I guess, is there a way for everyone to be happy at the end of the day? At this point?
It was the thing I alluded to yesterday, which is come back to the bargaining table. Don't wait for us to start losing our houses and bleeding out and watching our kids starve. Come back to the bargaining table. Let's hammer out these things. But let's start with the premise that we really respect what each other brings to the table.
Of course.
I really respect you giving me the opportunity to make beautiful things. You should really respect when we deliver them to you, because that's where all the wealth comes from.
Right.
That's where the stock prices come from. And you've actually done something for the world that is everybody should be grateful for. So why come to the bargaining table looking to kill me, looking to hurt me, looking to demean me? Come with a fucking barrel full of love and hugs and kisses, and goddamn, I'm gonna show you so much respect and admiration. And Betty Davis once said this about working for the old guard, the original studio heads. If they had just shown a touch of kindness, we would have walked through walls for them. It's so easy to do it that way than to say the only way I have any leverage over you is if I convince you, I gaslight you into thinking you are valueless.
Yeah.
And that's what this strike is about. They are trying to gaslight into thinking we have no value and we don't deserve to be asking for the things we're asking for, which is just fundamentally some health care. And if you make a gazillion dollars because you sold our show to 15 other places, just give us 1% of that. That's called a residual. We're not asking if you fail to give us money, but if you succeed, if you made a shitload more money, why wouldn't you give it to the people who created the thing that you just sold for 45 times over?
Right.
So there it is, guys. That's all of it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for elaborating on that, and thank you for being willing to talk about that on a platform like this. So we thank you. We appreciate that. And then I guess circling back sort of as a semi segue, but excuse me. So recently,
are we? How much more we got here?
No, not too much.
Yeah.
We'll wrap up soon. But
okay.
I guess one question that I kind of wanted to wait to ask you more towards the end. But on Instagram recently, you said that you learned everything you needed to know about being a man from cinema, from films, from movies, from doing movies. What were some of the films growing up that taught you how to be a man, as you said?
God damn. I mean, if I wanted to learn how to lead and do it in a way where you respected everyone else's place in the world, so that You weren't imposing yourself on anyone with your leadership. I watched John Wayne. If I wanted to learn style and panache in fighting for the little guy, I watched Errol Flynn. If I wanted to learn the best way to make a martini, I watched William Powell, the Thin Man. If I wanted to learn how to treat a woman, I watched Cary Grant.
You should watch it.
My wife just said I should watch more of it. You want to get in here, darling? My mouth is getting dry over here. These guys just can't stop asking me fucking questions.
Well, we will end on this, though. If you have one piece of advice to give, whether it be to a young, up-and-coming actor or young people in general, what's one piece of advice you would give us?
Find something to do that you love. And I'm not the first one to say that. I won't be the last. But it's a cliche. You've heard it a million times. But if you find something to do that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And then the other thing is that you should, every time, you're not going to fail unless you try to do something. If you stay at home and stay safe and never, push anybody's buttons or fuck with the status quo, you'll never fail, but you'll never get anywhere anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So if you're on a trajectory where you're trying to accomplish things and you have a lot of big dreams, the first thing you need to do is make sure you understand that every time you fail, you've given yourself an opportunity to become smarter, bigger, and better for the next time. So make failure a friend. Treat it as if it's the best thing that can happen to you. Because all of your learning and all of your character growing is going to come when you're getting the shit beat out of you. You're never going to learn anything or get better when you're succeeding. It feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we all want. We want to feel good, but it doesn't last. You got to find the next thing to go do. And that may require more punches to the nose or whatever. A lot of doors being slammed in your face. Mm-hmm. But you can't stop. You can't stop. So if you're going to keep going, you're going to fail. And if you make failure a friend, your life will be a whole lot easier.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Ron.
you.
We appreciate it. You can find us streaming platforms, Instagram, all that awesome stuff. YouTube,
on our Discord.
It's amazing. Thank you again,
You'll
Ron.
send me all that stuff, and I can. If I'm really bored one night, I'll listen to all this.
Yeah, 100%.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
That'd be
thank
great.
you for even doing this, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and
Ron Perlman.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, see you guys later.
Bye.